Hello, and thanks for joining us. Today on Arts 24.
So we've got a stripy top back there. You French? You're not French?
She was on the show back in June to discuss her bilingual viral comedy sketches about the French and English that have millions of views. Tatty Macleod is the ultimate France 24 guest who fits right in here in our franglais world. She's back as she's just moved to Paris, and she's got 3 dates coming up in the City of Lights at the ThéâtreDeL'Atelier. Welcome back, Tatty. How are you?
Thank you for having me. This is my second home. Love being here.
Well, you've just moved to Paris. Let's take a look at how that experience is going.
I start by putting on some makeup because, trust me when I tell you this, I always feel like this good-looking guy's in the Eurostar. Every single time I've taken the Eurostar the last month, someone has got chatting to me. # not an ad. Just over 2 hours later, I land in Paris, ready to start my new life full of joy and optimism. Then I bump into my first Parisian who spends 15 minutes complaining, and I remember how miserable they all are.
Okay, so just to remind the viewers at home,
You're not giving me a good reputation. This is not...
I think you're doing it to yourself, actually. Just to remind the viewers, you did grow up with your English mum and sisters in Brittany. You moved to the UK, that's where you studied. You've been based there for a few years, but now you have moved to Paris.
I have indeed.
It's the first time you've lived here. Tell us why you've decided to come.
Well, let me try and remember. No. I over the last year, I've been spending a lot more time in Paris, just with work, coming here, doing some bits of stand-up. I really enjoy spending time here. I've got to the point now where I've lived half my life in France and half my life in the UK. And I felt like it was time I really wanted to move back to France. I wanted to renew my relationship with France. I felt like there were some things that I could do here in terms of work, and it felt like a nice moment, a good opportune time to move back to France.
And you are on tour in the UK at the moment with your show Fugue. How would you describe it?
How would I describe my show? Well, first of all, it is funny. You know, I know that there are some deeper topics in it, like identity and where do we belong and culture, but it is funny. And I think that's a really important point I like to make, because I feel like my first role as a comedian is to make people laugh and to give them a good night out, and to we're living in a very heavy world at the moment with so much stuff happening geopolitically. I think it's nice as a comedian to just give people a space where they can go and have a good laugh. So it's funny, but it also does have some more, I'd say, poignant subjects, which is about sort of my upbringing, being bicultural, what it means to belong somewhere, and a few nuances around that.
Okay, well, it kicked off in Liverpool about a month ago. This is your video from your Instagram just before the show.
Come with me to Liverpool to kick off my tour. This is me on the train going over my show notes because I haven't done it in 3 months and I'm not sure I can remember it. And yes, this is the same woman, and no, I don't want to talk about it. Got to Liverpool and walked straight into Seoul Plaza to pick up some kimbap for supper. Then I headed to the Liverpool Everyman Theatre where I did a tech, then I put on my makeup, then I put on my costume. Transformation complete, thank Christ for makeup. This is my lovely Liverpool opener, Alison Spittle. Had a little pre-show boogie to get me to the vibe. Then I did actually have to get on stage. Made some references to wine to warm them up, which the French always love.
Bar saying, do we have any more wine in the cellar?
So there's so many videos to choose from, actually, on your Instagram that are hilarious. Your comedy really tackles things like booty calls, Parisian chicness, French waiters, British binge drinking. Tell us about, in your show, one subject that always gets people like hilariously laughing.
Whenever I talk about the difference between English and Frenchmen.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who's had any experience meeting British men and Frenchmen, dating both, you know, for good or for bad, that's definitely something which it seems, and also I have a lot of women in my audiences, so but men are welcome, you know, all people welcome, buy a ticket, come, but that's always something which really gets people laughing.
Okay, well, I've got an example of that. You say that you have a French-dar, which is a bit like a gaydar. Take a look.
You could be French, man on the front row, glasses. Yeah. You're not French. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? Because you just look really judgmental. There's just like an energy. It's a big... Whereabouts are you from, sir? You're Italian. Yeah, same.
Go on then, tell us, what is the biggest difference between French and British men? Or maybe
Rollnecks.
there are many. Roll next.
Roll next. No. The biggest difference between French and British men. I have to say, and also, I mean, this is all part of like the new chapter that I'm experiencing because I didn't grow up in Paris, I grew up in Brittany, and I left France when I was 18. So I grew up here, and that really gave me a good anchoring in French culture. But I haven't lived here as an adult.
So not a lot of dating.
So not a lot of dating, exactly. And so it's interesting, not just coming back here and dating, but dating in Paris, which is obviously a very different beast to Brittany. But what I'm noticing now, as an old woman who's dating Parisian men, is that they are a lot more confident. Is that the word I want to use? Yeah, I feel like Parisian men, they like to take charge, and English men are a lot more just apologetic about their existence and their presence. Sorry, but if you did perhaps want to go for a drink with me, maybe that would be. But like, totally understand if you don't want to. Whereas I find that Parisian men are much more forthright.
And have you got a preference, or you're still
too early
experimenting?
It's too early. I'm still in the taster phase.
Okay. Well, is this the first time you're actually performing your show in France?
It is. Yes, I hadn't even thought of that, but yes, it is.
So, what are you expecting from the audience here in Paris?
Audiences are very different in Paris. It's interesting because I've done bits of stand-up, so I've done a little bit of mixed bills, 20 minutes here and there, but I've not done my full show. What I know so far of French audiences, they're very respectful of the arts. So there's a lot of respect for the arts, but they're not necessarily, they don't laugh as much. So they respect you because you're on stage, but they're not necessarily going to laugh at what you're saying, but they also won't leave because they respect the arts. So there's a lot of, and then when you say something that's maybe quite well written, there's clapping. But you're not going to get the same, in my experience, you'll get quite the same sort of guttural, I've had 4 pints and you're hilarious kind of laugh.
Not quite so raucous.
Yeah, exactly, that's the word.
So this comedy, it all kind of began with your social media videos that have millions of likes and follows. I particularly enjoyed your videos about the Paris Olympics. Here's an example.
Un homme ou c'est une femme, ça? Oh, t'énerve pas! J'ai rien contre toute la LGBT, GTTT. Tu sais très bien que j'ai un collègue qui est bisexualiste. Moi, je trouve ça très bien qu'on montre au monde qu'en France, on n'a rien contre les... Ah bah, il y a Philippe Catherine, mais il n'y a pas Céline. Elle est où, Céline? Moi, ce que je veux savoir, c'est où est Céline. Ah, la voilà. Ça y est, c'est Céline. Céline. Elle est forte, hein. Oh putain, qu'est-ce qu'elle est forte. Bravo!
You were here a bit, though, during the Olympics, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think the French are proud of their games?
Yes, but it's that typical French thing, isn't it, where they complained incessantly in the build-up to it. Everything was wrong. The organisation of it, the happening of it.
Loads of them left, actually,
Loads of them
they?
left, didn't want to be here. And then the moment that it happened and all of the eyes of the world were on France, they sort of rallied together and they went, well, that was fantastic. That was the best it could have been. We hosted the best games in the world. It was just, there's this real thing. They close ranks. The French are very good at doing that. It's like we internally can criticise each other. But the moment that the rest of the world is shining their light on France, immediately they close ranks and they protect themselves and, you know, they have a lot of pride.
We saw you speaking, obviously, perfect French there. Do people think you're French when you meet them, French people?
It really depends, you know, because I have a little bit of an English accent now when I speak French because of living so long in the UK. But it can be misinterpreted or, you know, sometimes I feel, you know, some Frenchmen, they're going in for a bit of the flirt and there's a sort of element of, oh, there's a little accent there. It's exotic. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'd call England exotic, but like, sure.
Yeah, well, we'll take it. And I actually learned, because this comedy thing is relatively new for you. You actually went to law school. I actually went to law school and they did a big career swerve, obviously.
Look at us now.
Did you ever want to be a lawyer?
Yes, I did, but I think I wanted to be a lawyer because I I imagined myself wearing a wig in court and saying things like, I object. but it was always framed around being, like, just being on stage, essentially, and creating fun words and making the room listen to me and laugh, which is now what I do as a comedian. And, you know, there's less at stake.
Yeah. The stand-up show, it really is about belonging, the serious side of it, finding your tribe or not, and how to be okay with that. Obviously, you've just moved to Paris. You grew up in Brittany. You spent the middle years in the UK. Do you feel like you found your tribe? Or are you still searching, or are you just okay with not having one?
My tribe is my online community. I think it's people who come and see my show. It's everyone and anyone, and it's actually a big proportion of people who feel like I feel, which is to say they've grown up in multiple places, they've got lots of different cultural influences at home, and they recognise that feeling of not being able to answer the question of where do you come from in like a really succinct manner. And that isn't a geographic tribe, and it doesn't encompass just one culture or one nationality. It's people from all over the world, but we find each other because we recognise that feeling.
So basically your tribe is France 24, everyone who works in this building.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. So we always end our shows with, I guess, cultural pick of the moment. You've suggested a documentary by, called I Am Martin Parr, about the British photographer. Tell us a bit more about that choice.
So I just saw this last Friday in Paris, and it's a documentary about the iconic photographer Martin Parr, who I knew about but hadn't really seen a huge amount of his work. And it was really funny because I watched it in Paris. It's directed by Lee Shulman, who is a British man but also lives in France. And it was really interesting seeing it in Paris because it's so iconically British. So the pictures he's bringing up are not just a sort of like romanticised version of the UK, but it's also the British seaside, and it's the coronation, and it's all of these really hyperpigmented images of the UK. And yeah, I think it's a really nice, it's a really interesting and very accurate portrait of what the UK is. So I really recommend going to see it, both to discover him as a photographer, but also to discover his life and his work.
Okay. Tatty Macleod, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure to have you. We're going to leave you with I Am Martin Parr. Tatty Macleod will be at the Theatre, the ThéâtreDeL'Atelier in Paris on the 6th, 7th and 8th of December. Your UK tour continues until the end of November, and details of those dates are on your website. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Martin's very unassuming and brilliantly ordinary, but he's one of the greatest photographers of all time. You instantly know when it's a Martin Parr photograph.
Finding beauty in the trashy.